Hello everyone. In this video I am going to talk about functions. So you know what is a function in C programming language or any programming language. You have to use a particular property of that language that is known as function. Okay, they are said to be the building blocks of any programming language. So let us discuss what is a function. So you know this function is also contains a set of statements, but they are written in some particular formats. Okay, and these functions, it is also contains a set of statements, but these functions need to be called explicitly from somewhere. Then only it will execute its operations. Then only it will perform its task. Okay, so you have to call your function explicitly. So this function also contains a set of statements written in some particular format. So before applying or before using that function, you have to write the declaration, you have to write the statements of your function, and then you have to call the function from somewhere else explicitly. You have to call the function explicitly. That means you have to write the functionality first, you have to declare the function first, you have to define the function first, and then you have to call the function. Then only you will use the functionality of that function. Okay, so function is nothing, it is a set of statements which when executed, called by explicitly, then it will give you some result. Okay, so let us see what is a function. So whichever programming language you are talking about, this function is applied everywhere, whether it is a C programming language, whether it is a CPP or Java or Python, anywhere, any programming language, this function is used. So you have to define the function first, and this function should be called, then only it will start executing and it will give you some result. Okay, so this function, how these functions are defined, it is categorized into 4 different ways. The first way is that there is a function which contains no arguments. No arguments will be there, and no result will be there. No return type will be there. No return value. So first category comes under this section, no arguments and no return value. Second category comes under no arguments and with return value. That means it is not going to take any arguments, but it will give you some return value. Okay, and the third category is that with arguments, it is going to take some arguments and it is going to give you no return type. So no return value. Okay, and the fourth one is it is going to use with arguments and with return type, with return value. Okay, so these are the 4 categories. First is no arguments and no return value, and the second one is no arguments and with return value, and the third way of writing a function, defining a function, is with arguments and no return value, and the fourth category is with arguments and with return value. Okay, so let us see how the formats of these 4 categories, how the format of these 4 categories are differing. Okay, so how we are going to define function in each of these category. So first is no argument and no return value. So that means there is a function. Suppose you are going to write a function like main. You know that main is a function. Okay, main is a function. You are writing some set of codes, set of statements inside the main, and this main is invoked by whom? It is invoked by the operating system first. Okay, so similarly like that, we are writing a set of code and we call it as a method or function which is called by somewhere else explicitly, not by operating system but some other program. Okay, so suppose our example function, the name of the function is function. Okay, function. This is a function 1. Suppose the name of the function name is function 1. And since it is going to take no arguments, so there will be no arguments. Okay, no arguments. It is not going to take anything as input. Okay, and it is not going to give any return value. So there is no return type. So no return type. So in programming language, you are not going to specify this no. No means nothing. Okay, you are not going to take anything as intake, and it is not going to give output. It is not going to give any output of any particular return type. Okay, so there is no return type also. So this no is defined. This no is, instead of writing no, you have to write void. Okay, instead of no, you have to use void. So this is the way how you are going to define this is the way format. Okay, this is the way how you are going to define your function, which comes under the classification no arguments and no return type. So you will be writing here some codes inside these two curly brackets. Okay, so this is a function 1 with no arguments and with no return type. Okay, and next category is no arguments and with return value. No arguments and with return value. So the second one is no arguments and with return value. Okay, so that means your function name is you have to give your function name. This is function 1, and it is going to take no argument. So instead of writing no, what you have to write? You have to write void, and it is giving you some return value. That means when this function is executed, it is giving you some output of some particular return type. So you have to specify the return type here. Okay, so return type value you have to specify here. So what you have to, suppose it is giving you integer value as return type. So let us see. These are the statements inside that, and suppose it is returning some answer like 23. Okay, so what is 23? 23 is a value which comes under an integer type. So it is returning a value which is of integer type. So you have to specify the return value. If it is returning some floating value, suppose the value was 23.05, so you have to write here float. Okay, so this is how you have to define the function which comes under category 2. Now the third category is with arguments and no return value. With arguments and no return value. Okay. The third one is with arguments and no return value. Clear? So what happens? Suppose this is our function name. So it is going to take some arguments. Okay. So suppose you are going to write a character. Okay. Character argument is going to be you are going to write a character here, and when you are going to give this character, you have to put this value x as in a single quotation. Okay, so character. Otherwise you can write, when you are going to give integer, you can write this integer n. Okay, so it is taking some arguments with arguments, and it is going to give you no return value. So void function name int n. So now you are writing the function statements, and it is not going to return any value, so you are not giving any return value. Okay, so this is a function with a function 1 with argument and no return value. Now the last is with argument and with return value. With argument and with return value. Okay, with argument and with return value. So suppose the argument here is character. Okay, character. You are suppose the argument is character, and here you are returning a character. So this character is always indicated. You have to specify the variable with a single quotation. Okay, so suppose x is your character x. This one, and return is return, you are returning 23. So what happens? The return value is integer, so you have to specify the integer return type. Okay, so this is not necessary that if the argument is of some particular return type, then the return value should also be of that particular return type. It is not necessary. Okay, so that means in case of the banking operation, you see, when you want to deposit money in the bank, in your account, what you are doing, when you are reaching your bank, what you have to do? You have to provide some money to the bank, and they are depositing that money, and instead of means after when you are depositing money, what you are getting in return? You are getting a receipt. Okay, so the receipt type and the money is completely different thing, isn't it? They are not of same type. Similarly here, you are inputting some data of particular data type, and you are returning, you are getting the output in some other particular particular data type. So it is not mandatory that the input data type and the return value data type should be same. Okay, so this is a way of definition of a function with the arguments and with the return value. Okay, and the next one is that with arguments and no return value. So hope that is I have discussed this with arguments and no return value. So here what will be writing? You will be writing that I think I discussed earlier. Okay, so these are the four categories under which function is defined. The function definition comes under any of these four categories. Okay, so no arguments and no return type, and the second category is no arguments and with return type. Third category is with arguments and no return type, and the fourth one is with arguments and with the return type. Okay, so these are the four classifications of a function definition. Now let us see how these are called. So when the properties, when you have written all your code for a particular function, now that function has to be called, then only it will execute, isn't it? Suppose you have a pen with this, you are having this pen. Okay, so this pen has got its own property, this pen has got its own operations, but when it is going to perform its operation, when I am going to take this, I am calling it, I am using this pen, and then only it will do its operations, isn't it? Otherwise, if it is sitting there in somewhere, if you are placing this pen, is it going to do its task by own? No, you have to call it. Okay, the person who need to use this pen have to call this, then only it will to do its task. Okay, then only it will use all its properties and all its operations, isn't it? Similarly, you are having a mobile phone, so when you are not using, when no one is going to call you, you are going to get the call from anyone? No, someone has to call your number, then only you will get a call in your mobile phone. That means someone has to call explicitly, then this function of calling will invoke in your mobile system, and you can use the mobile. Okay, so this is how after defining a function, you have to call the function. So let us see how you are going to call the function. So the first category was no arguments and no return type. Okay, so no return type, no arguments and no return type. So how you are going to call? So the function name was we used was function 1. Okay, and no arguments. So this function calling is a statement, is a single statement, so it should be ended by the semicolon. Okay, so but function definition is not a single statement, it contains multiple statements, thousands and thousands of statements it can hold within that two curly brackets, but function calling is a statement, so it should end with a semicolon. It is a it is a only single statement. Okay, so this when you are applying, when you are using the category 1, that is no arguments and no return type, it is called like this only, function 1 with empty brackets and a semicolon. Why? No argument is there and no return value is there. Okay, so this is how it is called. And second is no arguments and with return type. Argument is not there, but return type is there. Okay, so how you are going to call? So you are going to call your function 1 like this, and it is giving some answer, it is giving some output, and it has got some return type. So suppose that output is stored in x, and that x is of integer type. Okay, so you have to specify the integer, the return type of that output value. Okay, so this is how this is called when you defined your function using this category. No arguments and with return type. So integer x equals to function 1 bracket, empty brackets. Now the third one is with arguments and no return type. With arguments and no return type. So what happens? With arguments and no return type. So how you are going to call? So suppose your function 1 is there and with argument is there. Okay, so now your function, you are calling this water, you are calling this 10. Okay, so and here what happens? No return type is there, so x. So what happens? Where this 10 will be replaced there, where in case of the with what was the definition you wrote in this case, with arguments and no return type. How it was defined? No, with arguments. Isn't it function 1 with arguments? So int x and it is returning no void. Okay, so this 10 will come to this point. Okay, and it will, using this 10, it will execute all the statements. So this is how it is called. Okay, and the next category is with arguments and with return type. Okay, so with arguments and with return type. So function, so here you are going to give, suppose you are going to give 20, the argument and return type. Okay, so this is the return type, suppose it is float. So you are going to write like this. Okay, so this is the return argument and this is the return type of your return value. Okay, so this function when completes its task, it is going to give you a output. It is going to give you an output. This output is stored in this variable x and this output is of particular type float. So because of that you have mentioned float. Okay, so this is how the functions are called after its definition. First you have to define the function, then you have to call the function somewhere in the program so that you can use the operations written in that function definition. Okay, so hope this is clear to all of you. What is a function, why you are using function, and what are the different categories or how many ways you are going to define a function and how you are going to call a function. Okay, so so this function is one of the important block in any programming language, whether it is a C, CPP, Python, Java, anything, any programming language, everywhere this function is an important block. Okay, building block for any programming language. So thank you for watching this video, and do like and comment my channel, subscribe my channel. Thank you.